Now, the time for Q&A.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Gabriel, and thank you, Father Rothlin, presentation. I have two questions for each speaker. First, for the Professor Gabriel, I would like to ask you that actually, I really appreciate and accept your presentation about the relationship between modernization and Christian culture. As I'm a Christian as well, yeah. But I'm aware that in Chinese society, now we are talking about a kind of Chinese style modernization. I would like to have your comments or observation about these suggestions, whether we can have different path of modernization, or modernization should have some kind of same genes, okay, for a good modern society. So this is a question for Apostle Gabriel. And for Father Rothlin, thanks for your sharing about Francis of Assisi's spirituality. I just wondered that another Francis, okay, there's this Francis Xavier, okay, from Society of Jesus, okay. I just wondered, okay, if we compare, okay, Francis Xavier and Francis of Assisi. Francis Xavier, he himself, okay, came to China, and I would like to know that, okay, from your perspective, whether two Francis, they have similar spirituality, or motivation from their spirituality, or they have some different emphasis, okay, in their thought and action. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for this encompassing question, which would, of course, now require a whole seminar to go over there. Thank you very much for this intriguing question, which, of course, would require a whole seminar. I think I just make two remarks. The first one is, of course, that there are also other routes in other cultures, which one could then lead a dialogue. I brought now the hypothesis of Chenu and some modern historians, and then we should have a dialogue on that. Then, of course, cultural and historical developments are never monocausal. That means you have, of course, the development into modernity in many, many forms. I had a talk at the university, St. Joseph's University, the other day, where I talked about the hypothesis of the multiple modernities, and also about the question how this is being now translated into the Chinese context. I had a lot of questions on that, and I hope still to have some answers on these questions, because I talked about the drama of atheist modernity, and what does that mean? What does that mean for the Marxist element? What does that mean for the nation, the nationalist element, and of Confucianism? So that just opens this whole Pandoric box of questions. But here we have, so to speak, one line which leads us back to the 13th century. Thank you.
Thank you also very much for the question. We could, in the case of Francis Xavier, rely maybe of the most elaborate biography ever written about any Jesuit. Is Georg Schurhammer spent 50 years of his life. And so we have a very precious source. And I would say what is similar, you have also a missionary on the threshold of a new time. Now it's Renaissance now, St. Francis Xavier embarking 1542, 1552 into Asia. And here I would say a same certainly missionary drive. We recall Francis Assisi meeting the Sultan. So here, with kind of in the context of the Renaissance, we see Francis Xavier departing and having actually then this insight, well, the key to Asia will be China. And also I would think when I read regularly into his letters of Francis Xavier, this really deep insight into kind of meeting the crucified Lord in the context of the Jesuits is the third week of the spiritual exercises. I think this is also in the life of Francis Xavier a crucial motivation on the way to resurrection. So you find many resonances. I would say still the most iconic is Francis Assisi, and so no wonder that the Jesuit Pope chose this as a reference. But I would say you, of course, also understand that why Francis Xavier is the patron of missions, that you have in his life all the elements of a missionary life, especially in the context of Asia.
May I ask a question to Father Stephan Rothlin, or an observation? Actually, first of all, dear Stephan, my compliments for your beautiful presentation. I think beautiful is the right expression in the context of this Franciscan legacy. And I think it is also refreshing to see a connection between the Marco Polo experience that we generally label so mercantile and the experience of the Stigmata alla Verna di San Francisco. Can you hear me? Yes? Yeah. So I would like to propose, more a question is an observation, which is this, that Francis of Assisi himself was the son of a textile merchant. And so his father was involved in what Dante calls the most rapacious moment of the Italian economy, the gente nuova, of subiti guadagni, people that gain riches in the fastest way. So Francis himself criticized his father when he wanted to be a knight, because being a knight, of course, was a way to get out of this mercantile group, and in a way a conservative choice, by Francis. But his experience as a knight was a failure, because he ended up a prisoner of war. And so by looking at the fact that the poorest of the prisoners were left died of starvation, Francis himself was spared because of his father's riches, that he paid a high ransom for his son. So he went back to Assisi. And this is a turning point in the mentality of Francis. And then again, he broke up with his father and decided to go on the crusade. Okay, so the experience of war is an experience very important for Francis. And so here I want to draw a comparison, not with Francis Xavier, but with whom? With Inigo de Loyola, who was an aristocrat of not so high of a rank in the Basque aristocracy, but definitely he fought and he was a soldier. And the transformation I don't want to teach you anything that you don't know, but I think that for me, being a lay person and named Francis, so I always look at both saints, Francis of Assisi and Francis Xavier. But another element or another figure that always interests me is the transformation that occurred in the mind and the heart of Inigo de Loyola when he decided to move out of this gentry mentality in this aristocratic mentality and embrace this call of a peregrination, which is also in his Itinerarium Mentis in Deum. It is in the mind of Loyola when he went to Paris. And then again, there's many more things that I think the Franciscan legacy is very important in the terms of addressing the poor, which is economically poor, but also illiterally poor, in the sense that this could work well also in the Republican context of China, meaning that we generally think of the contrast that we have between the Western ways with the People's Republic. But in reality, it is when 1911, Sun Yat-sen, in the Three Principles, he writes about, or he identifies the Yuan dynasty as totally foreign, the Qin dynasty is totally foreign, and recognizes the importance of a growth of China out of a mercantile Han center way. So I think that, again, if we consider the history of China more encompassing, and there you have a place for this Christian, which were locals visited by other Christians in a moment which wasn't that much, if I might correct you, an interludium. Is 100 and something years of Yuan dynasty, and the Yuan dynasty realized the perfect unification of China. Song had departed the empire, and so actually rejoice of the work done by Kublai Khan. Grazie mille for the attention.
Thank you, Professor Vasila, for your observation, and Professor Chopra.
Okay, I've got two questions. First one addressed to Professor Gabriel. And I'm pretty intrigued by two concepts you've used. First, this notion of early modernity. Yeah, quite well, obviously here you try to, sounds to me like try to see the continuity between what is normally called modernity and also with the early, medieval thought, like you used to be labeled as dark age, and also you used the concept of Christian humanism. I think serve the same. So it sounds like you do see kind of a continuity here between two, rather than saying modernity just a complete departure from the tradition. But my question linked to another concept I want to you maybe clarify. You use the term the cosmic order, and then you use the term the law of nature. But that in the Catholic theology, Christian theology, also very important term is the natural law. So I would like to see here, when you use the term the cosmic order, does it link with the natural law or the law of nature, which is usually linked with physics or scientific norms? So which one is that? Oh, you talk about both the natural law and the law of nature.
Yes, thank you very much for these two interesting questions. I mean, the question of continuity and discontinuity is, of course, a huge one. It is normally treated in a way that you would stress discontinuity between the modern times and the times before. If I pointed a bit the dark Middle Ages, so there was not much, so I can ask a colleague of mine in philosophy, very, very knowledgeable guy, a professor in philosophy, and very much present. And he will say there was no development between the 5th century and the 16th, 17th century. And actually, there was also a very good contribution in one of the Matteo Ricci books on law and order in Chinese and Western civilization. And there the professor, whose name I now forgot, a French professor, excellent account on Chinese story. But the Western story, he starts with Thomas Hobbes in the 17th century, and he says it's built on conflict and on non-cooperation, on struggle. And this is a bit the view of history which I try to counter, because, and most historians today too, we have a long stretch of continuity, which is then, of course, also has strong elements from the 18th century onward of discontinuity, whereby one can say, for instance, Taylor says that modernity is a potentialized, or how you could say, you understand, I don't know whether the English word exists, potentialized Christianity. So we have different forms there, and I think we have to discuss them. But I just would opt for this new historical view, the last 2 or 3 centuries, which puts a stronger stress on the medieval sources, on the medieval roots. Second question is, of course, a huge question and a very interesting one, which I now discovered, and there is a very good book by Francis Oakley, which is also online, and he shows that actually this whole notion of law first has 2 or even 3 sides. One has to think laws of nature, that means the strict causalities of nature, then a legal aspect, and a civic aspects, or one puts I now put the legal and the civic aspects together. But it's always this question of laws and what they mean for humans. I mean, the cosmic order is governed according to Christian theology by laws, and these laws are God-given. And that was the basis also of the idea of natural law, which then has a very long history in the Catholic thought, but its origins we find in Thomas Aquinas, and the idea is actually a fairly simple one. It is that there is an eternal law. God created the earth with his circle, so to speak, this beautiful picture. And then humans try to understand this order, but they always understand it imperfectly because the human mind is imperfect. So we try to grasp the laws of nature and the laws of the society, but we participate in the mind of God because we are created in the image of God, last picture, but we always do that, of course, only imperfectly. And then we try to translate that under the social circumstances, and that would be the lex humana, or the positive law, which is therefore always imperfect and has to be corrected by lex naturalis, the natural law, and the lex aeterna, so to speak, the highest level. And this concept is then translated in the late scholastics, and there is also the basis of human rights ideas, which then are more becoming prominent in the more Protestant form. But the idea is actually exactly the same. All the humans have a nature created by God. They have to obey to God-given laws, and these laws can be discovered by the human mind. And that is, of course, one string. The other string is that of physical science, which with its strong causalities. And that would be a long discussion but the difference in rationalities can already be found in Aristotle, that simply laws of nature have a different causality from laws of society.
Can I have another question for Father Rothlin? Just a maybe quick one. First of all, I thank you so much. I do think it's a very beautiful presentation too. Particularly, actually, I visited Assisi 2 years ago, and I went there as a tourist. But I was so touched by the story of San Francisco and understand the notion of this mystical experience. But in terms of mystical experience, I think all religion, I mean, different, not just the Christian, the Catholic one, but the other religion talk about mystical experience, and they always claim that it is beyond the sight. They talk about difference between sight, seeing, and the insight, which is more like a subtle or more like a deeper than just being just the central organ, something like that. But I'm curious, you say you have to see it to believe it. But in terms of mystical experience, do you think you have to experience it to believe in it? Because people outside religion always like wondering about this mystical experience, whether it's a real experience, like stigmata, or it's just kind of imagination or illusion, something, but of course people, you can talk from the spiritual viewpoint, but how do you convince to the outsider or non-believer it is a true spiritual mystical experience?
As the first way to respond is to try to establish a historical narrative, to argue through, for instance, Fioretti, the life of Francis Assisi, that there is a historical track record, what happened. It's not just out of a dream, of a myth, no, and also all this, I referred also to a very detailed history about Francis Xavier, that you have something solid of history. However, going then deeper, I would say the deepest level is an experience. So going beyond just an intellectual understanding, yes, I think that's important. Also, you have, I would say also Alverna. I have one of the most brilliant Franciscan theologians, Bonaventura, who also, that was his favorite spot, also Alverna. But that would lead, and this I think is the trigger point be going beyond the intellectual understanding. And we could also honor, in the case of Aquinas, is the true balance between intellect and mystical experience. Maybe then we lost this balance between intellect and emotional experience. So I think to come up with a balanced view of intellectual and emotional insight would kind of be the crucial aspect of this stigmata, so that people could relate to it also from other spiritual traditions and could accept it as something genuine, authentic.
Thank you. It's really a comment, so I will be quick. I absolutely agree with this, the perspective you've given on the importance of this period for the shaping of Western modernity. But I think we can fill out this story. And there are just two things to consider. The role of Islam, which I think was huge in many ways, but also the role of Byzantium. Venice would never have emerged as Venice without the relationship with Byzantium. So I think for brevity, what we've heard is the monocultural story. But as I'm sure you'll agree, if we fill out the details, a much more complex, richly diverse pattern of cultural exchanges is relevant to that period, which all fed into the shaping of our experience of modernity. So I don't know if you want to comment.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, there are the beautiful books now of Judith Herrin on Byzantium, who has done this very much also over the Ravenna, but also in general. And there has been, of course, a very intense exchange. And I think with the Arab civilizations, we are I think still in the process also of discovering. There are the simple facts that Thomas Aquinas used the Arab translations of Aristotle and had them on his desk. But this is still, for me, a story to be written, and it's important in the present time, whereby also to keep the balance between the different influences, I think has to be kept into mind. But that's just as a very short comment. Thank you anyway. I think it's an important addition.
To echo what you said, I think a major achievement of the 13th century is this dialogue we had, especially in southern Spain, between Muslims, Jews, Christians. And I think this was, all would also document the early modernity of this very fruitful interreligious dialogue. So, yes, so maybe on this.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Gabriel and Professor Rothlin. I remember that Bonaventura complained that some theologians in his time turned wine, which is gospel, into water, which is philosophy. The target probably is Thomas Aquinas, but no matter it's wine or water, we have refreshment outside for you. So